Medicare. On this Sunday, Reverend Sue and her guests unwrap the mysteries and confusion associated with Medicare. Coming up, Reverend Sue.
Got joy in my soul. God is in control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing all is well. He's attacking every day, but I'm watching while I pray. No matter the attack, I won't turn back.
Good evening, and thank you for joining Sunday Evening with Reverend Sue. Today, our guest is Michelle Tingley Clemens. She's the president of the Central Northeast Civil Association, Ward 7, Northeast Washington, D.C., as well as the co-conventor of the Great Panthers of Metropolitan Washington with a BA in Black Studies and in history. But I can go on and read her bio, but I would like to just tell all of us that she's an advocate for the homeless. She's an advocate for people who live in areas where the food is just so expensive they cannot afford to buy the food. She's an advocate for our seniors as our elderly population. She's an advocate for our children. She's an advocate for families. And she's also an advocate for this whole concept of Medicare and Medicaid advantages. And today, we would like to discuss Medicare and Medicare advantages. We know that the open season is now and would end December 7th. And we think that it's so significant that we bring Michelle on to give us some insight, additional information before we sign up for certain programs that we do not understand. So that is why Michelle is here today. And we thank you, Michelle, for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you so much, Reverend Sue, for this invitation and this opportunity to share with my fellow citizens some of the challenges that we're facing with our health care. Reverend Sue is right. I am the co-convener of Great Panthers of Metropolitan Washington. And as such, I've taken on the responsibility of helping to lead actions in order to protect the rights and the interests of senior citizens in this country. I mean, it's very interesting. In other countries, seniors are really honored. And so people want to hear from seniors, whereas here, there's all these jokes about how, I'm sorry, you can probably see that I'm a senior, that we just can't hear well, and we've outlived our time, and we're taking up space. You may have folks who are too polite to say it, but the policies and the actions of our government certainly don't indicate that they think any differently. And I was talking to Reverend Sue about this new scheme that they have called Medicare Advantage, which, as an expert I heard on a program earlier today said, is neither Medicare nor is it an advantage. So the name Medicare Advantage is actually designed to confuse consumers. And it's designed to make people think that this is actually a government monitored and regulated program.
Now, I would like to just go back. So why do people think that it's a program to confuse our elders?
Because the information, I just looked at a bunch of reports that were done by inspectors general from around the country and different federal agencies that monitor them. And they have found that in more than half of the cases, in fact, I've seen numbers as high as 83%, that the claims that were made to seniors are not in fact true, or it's very difficult to access those benefits. Like we see Captain Kirk and Joe Namath and J.J. Walker on TV talking about all these great benefits we can get. Well, first of all, none of us believe that they're sitting around waiting on extra Medicaid, extra food stamp money to come to them monthly. But what they're telling us as seniors is that we can get more services and we can even get money back in our Social Security checks. But what they're not telling us is where that money is coming from. And that's why I'm saying that it's a scheme, because it started decades ago. In fact, when I was researching it, I was really surprised to find out how far back. We went back to the origin of health maintenance organizations, where different healthcare experts came up with ideas on how they could provide at least the image of more healthcare but provide less, spend less money doing it, meaning that they can make more profit off of what it is they claim we're getting. And I can tell you about some of those schemes. And some of us have even been found evidence of it ourselves. Now, one of the biggest violators is the healthcare agency that is operated, of all things, by AARP, and they have had the most violations. What they find is that the companies that are promoting and selling Medicare Advantage, they are claiming as their overhead as much as 40% of the money that they bring in, whereas standard Medicare only pays 2% of the budget in administration. Whereas all these companies that are trying to sell us on Medicare Advantage are taking 40% of the money they are bringing in as their profit. It's not being provided as services to us. But what they're also not telling seniors is that regular Medicare allows you can go to any doctor you want to. Whereas Medicare Advantage, you're substituting for the money that they claim you're getting. You're substituting choice. It means that you're now in a limited network. You're in a situation where the doctor doesn't get to make the choice about your health care, but the insurance broker gets to make the decision about your health care. And guess what? If the broker is making the decision and they're in the business to make money, and they make more money by providing less services, guess what their choice is going to be? It's not going to be in our best interest. And there's evidence, and there's many, many cases where they find that and the problem is that too many people don't complain and challenge them, that people go try to get services that their doctors have prescribed. And the company says, well, you have to get pre-approval. And then many times they'll even deny it after the evidence comes through. And they make you wait so long that people get disgusted and they give up. Or sometimes it costs people's lives because, oftentimes when we're asked to get extra tests, it's because they've been an indication that something more is wrong. Might be an indication that you need surgery. But if you have to wait 6 months before you finally get the test where the doctor says you need it, it might be by that time, it might have gone from benign to malignant. Also, many of the major cancer centers, that are providing services that we as seniors are likely to need as we get older, don't participate in Medicare Advantage. So you can't even go to places like Sloan Kettering, Montefiore, the major cancer. I'm mentioning those because I grew up in New York and I happen to know those. But I know that, those are major cancer centers and they don't participate in Medicare Advantage. So a lot of times when they say your choices are limited, I also just read that in only 4 states, if you decide that you don't want Medicare Advantage after 1 year, you won't be able to get into, you won't be able to make the change, or you'll have to spend a lot of money. And for people who have taken the option of the Medigap program, which means that you take out an extra plan for extra services that you're likely to need, they won't take you after a year's time if you have conditions like high blood pressure, obesity, any problems with kidneys or elimination, or a knee replacement, or some of the things that are really common to people as they reach the ages of 65 and beyond. So knowing that people are going to need those services, they've made it much more difficult for people to get those services. And that's why, I know, and thank you for asking, but that's why I've just labeled it a scheme. My husband tells me I have a bad habit of trying to put in shortcuts, but thank you for asking me to explain that more clearly, because I had to really study it. And all I did every time I got to another factoid is I just got angrier and angrier.
So
You
it's
know, I
important
remember
that we do our research and to speak to Medicare agents about our needs rather than just
that a
enrolling in
broker.
something that you do not enrolling in the program that you do not understand. And another thing is
Exactly.
that why is it so important? We're talking about 65 plus, but then we also know there are a group of people that can receive Medicare without being 65, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Those are people who get it because of disabilities.
right.
So there's already, in order to get it because of a disability, you have already been through, I can't even begin to tell you, dozens to hundreds of pages of forms to fill out, tests to be examined, experts to affirm it in order to be able to get disability. And then, and that's the one other place where you might be able to get Medicare. That's the other place
Mhm,
where you're eligible for Medicare benefits. The
mhm,
benefits that are eligible to people regardless of age is Medicaid, but that's income. That's based on your income. And that's
mhm,
something that, at one of the facts is that Medicare and Medicaid were sort of a concession to the industries that were fighting against Roosevelt's effort to get universal health care. And many
mhm,
people don't know we have been fighting in this country for universal health care for over 100 years. One of the biggest opponents to universal health care has been the American Medical Association.
mhm,
And I mean, they're just one, but the insurance industry is dead set against it. And they're the ones, this scheme was actually originated, and this is why I was really surprised to find out, was actually originated back in the Nixon years. That's
mhm,
how far back it went. And then like action was beginning to be the kind of the bigger scheme was being developed by during the George W. Bush years. But this has been an effort by the insurance industry and the brokers and the profiteers to make as much money as they can off of us as seniors. And they have seen seniors as a great tactic, but they have to be careful because we are the largest voting bloc. And if seniors understood what was going on and got angry about it, it would turn things around. The other thing that needs to happen is that younger people need to understand this fight is not just our fight, it's their fight too. Because what the brokers are doing is basically bankrupting the whole Medicare idea and Medicare system in the name of Medicare Advantage. But really what it is profiteering. And one of the latest schemes I just learned about is called something called APO Reach. I can't remember what it stands for. It sounds like it should be a good thing. But what it means is that if doctors who are taking Medicare Advantage patients, if there are other patients in that practice who are not with Medicare Advantage, that they can be transferred to a Medicare Advantage without their consent. And that is thoroughly unacceptable. And supposedly it's supposed to go into effect in January 2023. I say the more of us who understand about what is being done to us and being done in our names, I mean, that's incredibly offensive, that we will be the ones who make the change. We're the ones whose interests are being violated. It's not just our interests, it's our families' interests, because we know as we get older, it's our families, our children and our grandchildren that we're going to be
mhm,
relying on for the care and for the care and that we need returned to us for all of the love and investment and care that we put into the younger generation. I'm
mhm,
not saying that they owe it to us. I'm saying that they, like many others, were taught to care for their friends and neighbors and communities. We've all been taught to care for others as ourselves. We've all been taught that we are part of a greater community. But as Martin Luther King once said, of all the injustices, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember it exactly, but of all the injustices that we confront, injustice in healthcare is perhaps the most pervasive and barbaric. And the
mhm,
reality is that our healthcare has been compromised when universal healthcare was first proposed in the days during before the Civil War and during Reconstruction. It was opposed by Southern legislators because they didn't want it if black folks could have it. They didn't think it was right that ex-slaves should get universal health care, as part of the universal citizenry.
Right.
And ever since that time, we have been among the greatest proponents and advocates to make this happen, because we realize that as the least of us is dealt with, that compromises all of us. We understand that we're not in this world alone, that we live in this world as a community. That's the whole reason for the climate action movement, because it's not about stopping climate change with climate action. I mean, there's so many things, as Reverend Sue said in her introduction, that we have to identify which are the major challenges that we're fighting. My husband and I, back in 2003, Richard Tingling Clemens, we organized the first national conference on single payer insurance on behalf of Congressman Conyers. And we brought in experts from all over the country, experts who were advocates from trade unions, from citizens unions, from nursing unions, from people who were providing care, trying to explain to everybody that, that this was necessary, that all of the money that this country may have some of the great advancements in healthcare, but what it does the poorest job in the world of, is providing healthcare for all of its citizenry. It's the only, I'm sorry, it's the only industrialized country.
No, basically what I'm looking at as well is that we have an open season for Medicare every year. And
right. October to December.
Right. Churches can get involved by being ongoing, constantly feeding the information, constantly looking at the new bill that want to be passed, constantly looking at the new law, so that we can be up to date, not only during November and the first week of December, but we already throughout the year. Will you comment on that as well? So
yes.
Where do we go? The question is, where do we go to educate ourselves, not just November and the first week of December?
Well, I have loads of articles that I can forward to you. I think it would be a really good idea. In fact, one of the things that Great Panthers is going to commit to is we're going to put together a fact sheet, with the free fact sheet, frequently asked questions, about what's the difference between Medicare and Medicare Advantage. What are the things you need to be looking out for when you're looking for Medicare? Who can you call for information? The government actually even has an information line, 1-800-Medicare, that people can call to ask basic questions about. And I know a couple of other Medicare helplines, but we can begin by making sure that this information is made available, and you can help us to get it to the churches, because we know that they are going to be a major force in reaching our residents and the people who need this information. Right now, there's not, I'm sure you heard my phone ring several times. I can promise you, of those 3 calls, 3 of those calls were about Medicare Advantage. Now that when I get the next 8 calls, only 6 of those calls will be about Medicare Advantage. The others will be trying to sell me on my student loans are I can get them paid off now, and I have to remind them that they were already paid off. Actually, I have to hang up on. But anyway, I'm just saying that we get 10 to 20 calls a day from people trying to sell us on Medicare Advantage. So that basic number, we ought to make sure every senior knows that number, that everybody, and they can check out what the claims that the Medicare Advantage people are giving them on the phone. And you can check out all those claims they give you, and you can ask Medicare about them. And you can ask them, what are the dangers? Because the dangers are that once you sign up with Medicare Advantage, then you're on a time clock. You may not be able to get out of it. So that's really important for seniors to know, especially as they're trying to, make a choice, sign up for Medigap plans, make sure that it's not just us, making sure that our parents, have the information that they need for signing up for the plans. And you're right, churches are really going to be a major entity, and I would love the opportunity to work with them more.
And I think that from the standpoint of having leaders in our churches, that would be a major issue, a topic that we would continue to educate not only our seniors, but the congregation about various issues. But mainly we're talking about Medicare and Medicare Advantages before it's right up under us, and now you panic with the 1,000-page booklet that they send you at the end of the year. You celebrate, and then you got to read this and find out whether
Medicare and you,
or whether I should change that, or should I change this. But be prepared, proactive. Be prepared before November. Be prepared before the first week of December, so we can make some very good choices about our lives. And also, listen to the Holy Spirit speak to us, and understand that God would guide us. And when God put that information out there for us, not to turn our back on it, but be willing to receive the information, so we can have better care for our loved ones, better care for our children who are coming up, like the Gen X should be a part of that discussion.
Absolutely.
Now, instead of just talking to our seniors, but it's so significant now that Gen X, whatever we learn, Gen X should be beside us to learn the same, to get the same education, because they're the ones now caring for their elderly, their parents. So
yes.
many of the private insurers are offering Medicare advantages at no cost? Question mark. Is that
right?
No
well, it's no cost to you now. It because Medicare Advantage strategy is they reach out to seniors when they're younger, because because they aren't thinking like, well, I'm not going to need that. Well, I won't need that. Many times we can't see ourselves without the faculties that we have right now. So when those begin to fail, and then you realize that there's other kinds of help that you need, it probably is not going to be available to you through Medicare Advantage. And the problem is that we have to do a better job of getting people to think beyond the immediate moment and think down the road, because Medicare is a program that was designed to protect and support us throughout our lives. Not when somebody else decides that they're tired of us having these benefits, but it's supposed to be supporting us throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And now, what happens is when you get older is when it begins to cost. There's Democracy Now! Did a segment on it where a gentleman who used to be the health broker promoting these programs for both Cigna and Humana is now heading up an insurance advocacy group where they're fighting against Medicare Advantage and trying to arm citizens with this information. And I'll see if they have anything that we can make use of in doing some little educationals for various churches. But if there are any events or activities, it would be good. We can try to see if we can get people there to help. I know a number of churches have health committees.
A resource information that you can leave with us, say for a phone number or email address?
Phone number, I'd say 202-388-1111, and that's for here. Indeed, that's the Great Panthers.
Okay.
For Medicare, I would recommend 1-800-Medicare.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
For basic information about Medicare, and I'll get you some more numbers.
Michelle, thank you so much. Leaving us today, or what would be a couple of things that you want to leave with us in reference to this? I feel like this is a very important subject, and that's why we talked and agreed that we will discuss it. Not a long time, but just a few minutes to educate myself as well as others in making the right decision during this time, this season right now. To read, to understand, and thank God for you, having you and others here in the city to give us good information before we make a decision. So what are two different things you would like to leave with us today?
Remember to, I forgot what the phrase was about, looking at and not buying something without reviewing and inspecting it. Those old warnings are still critical right now. Mm-hmm. We have to become informed consumers. We need to know what is the truth about what it is people are offering. You can call Medicare and ask them what kind of information they have on that agency and how can you get more information since you're considering signing up for them. How is it different from Medicare? Is it better than Medicare? Mm-hmm. Where can you get more? And you can find out also if they're one of the agencies that's been inspected by Medicare. they've actually come up with a ranking system, although I'd be cautious because I think they have insurance companies ranking themselves. But they can give you some basic factual information, which is what you got to start with. And then I think that we should be collecting the information and responses we get back. But what I want to leave people with is that these are our lives and this is our future. It's important for us to be involved. We are still the people who have built this country. We make and produce everything in this country. And yet, they make it sound like workers and working class is somehow something to be ashamed of. But we know that this country relies on us, and so do we. So we are determined that we're going to make this the best country that it can be for our children and grandchildren. And that means that we have to be involved and informed. And I thank you all for your interest.
And I will leave with our friends is that the apple on the tree looks good, looks juicy, very appetizing, very delicious. Always remember what is really inside of that apple. And for us, when we're looking at Medicare and making decisions, is that what's really inside of those pages, what's really inside of those advertisements, what's really inside of the conversation that we're having. May God bless you and hope, and it's good to see you. And I continue to do the work that you and Rick are doing tremendously throughout this city. May God bless you. And hopefully we'll see you again. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
So then I kneel down to pray. Pray, help me please. And he said, you don't have to cry, 'cause I'll supply all your needs.
As soon as I stop worrying, worrying how the story ends.
When I let go,
and I